let's jump right in with mistake number 1, focusing on revenue over profits. So when I first started my agency, Atlas Digital, when I scaled to about $100,000 per month, we were at about a 50% profit margin, which means that we were taking home at the end of every month around $50,000. And when we went on to scale to about $300,000 a month, our profit margin during some months was as high as $100,000 per month, which means it was at about a 33% profit margin. Now, during those days, my agency was also pretty dang automated, which means I didn't really have to show up. I had an entire team in place running the day-to-day. Now, over the years, what's happened is that even though I still focused on profits when scaling my agency, anytime that I've posted on social media, anytime that I've posted inside of my own private community, people want to scale. People want to hit big numbers. People want to be able to say that they reached the $1 million agency mark. And what tends to happen is that then agency owners have gotten lazy with their margin and they've started to chase revenue numbers over what's actually going to be hitting their bank that they get to keep at the end of every month. So the biggest mistake that I think I've made over the last few years is not emphasizing this enough. While you're scaling your agency, if you're just trying to build for the long term and you don't need money, feel free to reinvest all the profits back in and build for the long term. But if you're just trying to make some money, make your first $1 million that you actually get to keep, I would say it's important to also focus on profits. So again, when I started my agency and when I scaled it, I was focused on profits, but I think over the course of over the last few years, especially with my $100,000 per month awards, the attention is focused more on revenue, on top line revenue. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how much money you're making if you're not keeping a lot of it. So my recommendation to all of you guys is this: when you're starting out, focus on profits, but if you're trying to scale aggressively, also be willing to focus on revenue and reinvesting a ton of that profit back into the business so that it scales faster. For example, one of the agencies that I helped hit $100,000 per month and do it in 30 days, they had a team of closers, account managers, media buyers already in place that they were paying for on day one, and they were in the red. But that allowed them to also scale much faster than a lot of other people. So in business, it's not so black or white. It's not like there's one way to do everything. And I think that when you're scaling your agency, it's more about asking yourself, what season am I in? Am I in a season of putting money back into my account and building my war chest? Or am I in a season of aggressive growth where I'm willing to reinvest everything back into my business for a potential bigger profit later down the road? So that's mistake number 1. It's this kind of hyper focus on top line revenue. And at the end of the day, my actual take is that it depends on what season you're in. If you're just starting out and you want to make money and you want to keep it, focus on profits more. And if you are looking to build this giant empire and you're willing to play long term and you don't need the cash right now, be willing to reinvest everything back in, or at least a lot of the money back in. Mistake number 2. Over the last few years, I've told a lot of people to focus on setting and closing appointments, and I think what's happened is that it has distracted people from the underlying first principle of business, which is to have a great product or service. I fundamentally believe that if you nail the product or the service, the marketing becomes easier. If you nail really good marketing, the sales becomes easier. Yet most people focus on sales, then marketing, then product. I'm a fundamental believer that if you're not getting people results and your product and service is not absolutely amazing, you're not going to be able to scale. That being said, the reason that I've gone hyper aggressive on telling people to focus on setting and closing appointments is because most people never actually get their first client. If you look at 100 agency owners in a random group, 90 of those 100 either haven't started or they've started but just haven't landed their first client. And it's because they're focused on the wrong things. They're focused on making the most beautiful website. They're focused on watching more YouTube videos and just learning and feeling like they're making progress. They're focused on all of these things that make them feel like they are moving in the right direction but aren't actually moving the needle on the business. And I also fundamentally believe that if you don't have clients, you can't get them great results. And I also believe that you need to put the mask on yourself first before you put the mask on the person next to you, just like they tell you in the airplane. So again, business is not black or white. It's not one or the other. The best entrepreneurs can put context into these lessons. Every YouTuber that you guys watch, every guru that you listen to that gives you black or white principles, you have to take those and apply them to the context of where you're at in your business, specifically for your model, for your niche, for your skill level. And that's when you get the best entrepreneurs, the ones that can contextualize the advice. So it's not set and close appointments or client results. It's actually both. That's the real answer. It's both. You have to be willing to both get clients and do everything that it takes to get them great results. And if you only focus on one or the other, it's gonna be problematic. You're gonna run into issues. If you just focus on setting and closing appointments, you're gonna fuck people over, and that is unethical. And if you only focus on client results and nothing else, then you're never gonna get clients. And that's where most agency owners line up. So my ultimate belief is that the best agencies can do both. They can operate in a way that they're always setting and closing appointments, and they're always putting all of their energy into client results. And obviously this is going to be hard when you're just starting out, but as you scale and you have a team in place, you can absolutely do this. So for example, when I had my agency Atlas Digital, my retention rate was, on some months, it was 100%. When I personally managed over 50 clients, so I had a client roster of 50 clients, I was running all their ads, I was checking their accounts 3 times a week, I was doing bi-weekly check-in calls with absolutely everyone, I was on text access with all of my clients, and at the end of the day, they retained. So it's not client results or setting and closing appointments, it's what do you need to focus on based on where you're at. And if you have 0 clients, if you have no experience, if you have no free trial clients even, then you need to focus on setting and closing appointments. But if you have a ton of clients and you can close, then aggressively pivot to working on the product or service and making sure that your clients have a perfect experience. So again, it's context. And I think over the years, things have been taken in these kind of like black or white extremes, and people say, oh, Joel just cares about closing clients. But in reality, my belief is that the first underlying principle, if we go back to first principles thinking, is product service. That's really dialed in, then marketing, because that gives you sales at scale, then sales. That's the order of priority. But most beginners, again, get so stuck on steps 8, 9, and 10, overthinking, and they get paralyzed by their lack of action on the right things. So most people don't ever even get their first free trial client. Think about that. So as a coach, I have to tell them, set and close appointments, set and close appointments, set and close appointments, set and close appointments, and it brings them back to the middle. If they're on this end of the extreme, where they're not focused on setting and closing appointments at all, and if I tell them, hey, focus on setting and closing appointments part-time, and then the other part-time on client results, what's going to happen is that they're going to be stuck over here. Or maybe they'll get a little bit better, but it won't really bring them to the middle. Whereas if I tell them, hey, focus on setting closing appointments like your life depends on it, it's going to bring them to the middle.